The transport ship Morning Star slowed as it approached Stellar Colony Station 9. The massive space station hung against the backdrop of stars like a silver spider, its 8 long docking arms extending from a central hub. Hundreds of lights glittered across its surface, marking windows, airlocks, and landing bays. In his small private cabin, Ta Kim looked at his reflection in the mirror. His dark skin contrasted with the simple gray clothes he had chosen. No badges, no rank insignia, nothing that would tell anyone he was the new chief administrator of the entire station. Final approach to Station 9. All passengers prepare for docking procedures, announced a pleasant voice over the ship's speakers. Tai took a deep breath. For 5 years, he had worked at Earth's Unified Space Command headquarters. His research on space law and his talent for solving complex problems had earned him this important job. But before he officially took command, he wanted to see how the station really worked. He wanted to experience it as a regular person would. He had heard troubling reports about Station 9. Some security officers were said to treat non-humans and humans with dark skin poorly. Earth Command had received complaints about unfair searches, rude behavior, and even violence. That was part of why they had sent Ta here, to fix these problems. Ta packed his few belongings into a simple bag. His real luggage, including his uniforms and official documents, would arrive later with Admiral Yoon, who was coming to introduce him to the station staff tomorrow. For now, Tai carried only his civilian ID card, which showed his real name but not his rank or position. The ship docked with a gentle bump. Ta felt the subtle change as the station's gravity took over from the ship's artificial gravity field. He joined the line of passengers moving toward the exit. The arrival hall was huge and busy. Different species from across known space moved through the area. Tad noticed how the flow of traffic was directed. Most aliens and humans with darker skin were guided toward lines with more security officers and scanning equipment. Humans with lighter skin often passed through with just a quick check. Tai chose a middle line and waited his turn. He watched the security officers at work. Their blue uniforms carried the Station 9 patch, a stylized number 9 with stars around it. 3 officers caught his attention. Name and business, asked the officer at the desk when Tai reached the front of the line. His name tag read Captain Jin Park. Ta Kim. I'm here for work assignment, Ta said simply. He handed over his civilian ID card. Captain Park looked at the card, then at Ta, then back at the card. His eyes narrowed. Says here you're from Earth. Korean background. Park asked. Yes, Tai replied. Park waved over 2 other officers. Their tags identified them as Officer Dae-sung and Officer Hanley. We've got an interesting one here, Park said to his colleagues. Claims he's here for work. Officer Lee took the ID card and examined it. This doesn't list any specific job assignment. I'll be assigned tomorrow, Tai explained truthfully. The details will arrive with Admiral Yoon's ship. The 3 officers exchanged looks. Admiral Yoon. Officer Sung said with a laugh. So you know the Admiral personally, do you? Step aside for additional screening, Captain Park ordered, pointing to a small booth nearby. Ta complied without argument. He was troubled by what he saw but wanted to experience the full process. Inside the booth, Officer Lee began scanning Ta's bag while Officer Sung conducted a body scan. Not much luggage for someone coming to work, Sung commented. My main belongings will arrive tomorrow, Ta explained again. Convenient, Captain Park said from the doorway. And tell me, how does someone like you afford passage to Station 9? These aren't cheap tickets. Ta noted the way Park said, someone like you, with clear negative meaning. My employer covered the cost, Ta said simply. And this mysterious employer is? Park pressed. Earth Command, Tai answered truthfully. The 3 officers laughed. Earth Command doesn't just send people to Station 9 without proper documentation, Park said. You know, we've been having problems with certain types of visitors lately. People trying to sneak onto the station for illegal activities. My documentation is in order, Ta said calmly. Captain Park leaned close. Listen, we keep this station safe by knowing who belongs and who doesn't. And right now, you're setting off all kinds of alarms for me. Officer Sung emptied Ta's bag on the table, roughly handling his personal items. No weapons, but that doesn't mean anything. Lots of ways to cause trouble without weapons. Ta remained silent, observing and remembering everything. I think we need to make sure our visitor understands Station 9 takes security seriously, Captain Park said with a slow smile. Officer Lee, bring me the S7 deterrent. Officer Lee's eyes widened slightly. The S7. For an arrival screening. Are you questioning my orders? Park snapped. No, sir, Lee said quickly, leaving the booth. Ta stood calmly, wondering what an S7 deterrent might be. He didn't have to wait long. Officer Lee returned carrying what looked like an old-fashioned ball and chain, though made of modern materials. The ball was smaller than historical versions, about the size of a large grapefruit, but looked heavy. It was attached to a strong metal band and a length of thin but clearly strong chain. This, Captain Park said with obvious satisfaction, is how we handle suspicious visitors on Station 9. The S7 personal monitoring device. You expect to attach that to my leg? Ta asked, keeping his voice neutral. Smart man, Park smiled. It won't hurt you. Much. It's just heavy enough to be uncomfortable and to remind you that we're watching. It has tracking technology so we know where you are at all times. And it makes a nice little beeping sound every few minutes so everyone around you knows you're being monitored. Is this standard procedure? Ta asked. It is for people who might be trouble, Officer Sung said. You should be grateful. Sometimes we have to detain suspicious arrivals for days while we verify their stories. Ta considered revealing his identity but decided against it. This experience was proving more valuable than he had expected, though deeply troubling. I assume you'll remove it when Admiral Yoon arrives tomorrow, he asked. The three officers laughed again. Still sticking to that story. Park shook his head. We'll remove it when we're satisfied you're not a threat. Could be days. Could be weeks. Officer Lee knelt and attached the device to Ta's right ankle. It was indeed heavy, and Ta had to adjust his stance to keep his balance. Welcome to Station 9, Captain Park said with a smirk. Officer Sung will escort you to the public levels. Stay out of restricted areas, or the S7 will let us know, and you'll face serious consequences. As they left the screening booth, Captain Park called to Sung. Take him through the main concourse. Let our other visitors see what happens when you don't have your story straight. Officer Sung led Ta through the busiest part of the arrival area. The ball and chain made walking difficult. Ta had to take shorter steps and drag the weight along. Every few minutes, the device emitted a soft but clearly audible beep. People turned to look, some with curiosity, others with pity or disgust. Ta felt their stares but kept his head high. He was learning valuable information about how the station operated. Tomorrow would bring changes, but for now, he observed and remembered. Enjoy your stay on Station 9, Officer Sung said mockingly, leaving Ta at the entrance to the public accommodations level. Remember, we're watching you. Ta watched him walk away, then looked around at his new command. Despite the weight dragging at his ankle and the occasional beeps drawing unwanted attention, he smiled slightly. Tomorrow would be very interesting indeed. Ta Kim woke early in his small room at the public quarters of Station 9. The monitoring device on his ankle had made sleeping difficult. Each time he moved, the weight shifted, and the occasional beep had startled him awake more than once. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the device. The S7, as Officer Park had called it, was a clear abuse of power. It wasn't just the physical discomfort, it was the public shame the officers wanted to create. The beeping noise was designed to draw attention. The weight was meant to be a constant reminder of their control. Tai checked the small clock on the wall. Admiral Yoon's ship would dock in 6 hours. The station-wide meeting to introduce the new chief administrator was scheduled for 3 hours after that. Until then, Todd decided to continue his inspection of the station. He dressed in the same simple clothes from yesterday and left his room. Walking with the ball and chain required a particular rhythm. Short steps. Pause to move the weight forward. Another step. Ta had practiced last night until he found a way to move that didn't strain his leg too much. The public level of Station 9 was waking up. Shop owners opened their doors. Workers headed to their jobs. Ta saw the same pattern he had noticed yesterday. Security officers were much more likely to stop and question non-humans and humans with darker skin. He entered a small cafe and ordered breakfast. The server, a young woman with kind eyes, looked at his ankle device and then quickly away. First time on Station 9? She asked as she brought his food. Yes, Tay replied. Is it that obvious? She smiled sadly. The S7 is. Well, security uses them a lot lately, especially on certain visitors. Certain visitors? Ty asked, though he already understood. The server looked around to make sure no one was listening. You know, anyone who looks different. Aliens, people from Earth colonies with darker skin. She lowered her voice. Captain Park and his team have gotten worse in the past year. No one stops them. Why not? Ty asked. The interim commander is busy with other matters, and no one wants trouble. As Ty ate, the device at his ankle beeped. Several customers looked over, then quickly away. Do many people have to wear these? Ty asked, pointing to the device. More every month, the server said. Most just keep quiet and wait until security removes them. Making a fuss only makes it worse. Ty finished his meal and thanked the server. Outside the cafe, a group of station security officers walked by, led by Officer Da Sung. Well, look who's enjoying our station hospitality, Sung called out when he spotted Ta. How's the S7 treating you? It's heavy, Ta said simply. Sung laughed. That's the point. Captain Park wants to see you, by the way. Come with us. Ta followed the officers, dragging the heavy ball as they led him through public areas where many people could see. Every few minutes, the device would beep, and heads would turn to look. This wasn't just security. This was public humiliation. They arrived at a security office where Captain Park sat behind a desk. Officer Hamley stood nearby. How did you sleep? Park asked with a smirk. I hear the S7 can be quite the companion at night. I've had better nights, Tai answered honestly. Well, we've been doing some checking on your story, Park said. Interesting timing. You arriving just before Admiral Yoon brings in the new chief administrator. Yes, Tai agreed. Very interesting. The thing is, Park continued, we can't find any record of you in the personnel files for station assignments. My papers will arrive with Admiral Yoon, Todd explained again. Captain Park stood and walked around his desk. You know what I think? I think you're trying to sneak onto this station for the ceremony. Maybe you're a protester. Maybe you're planning something disruptive. I'm not planning anything disruptive, Ta said calmly. Then why all the secrecy? Why no proper documentation? Park demanded. Tay remained silent. In a few hours, everything would be clear. Your silence tells me all I need to know, Park said. Officer Lee, I think our visitor needs to experience the full Station 9 tour before the big ceremony. Lee nodded. Yes, sir. For the next 2 hours, the officers paraded Tai through every public level of the station. They walked slowly, making sure the ball and chain was visible to everyone. When the device beeped, they would stop and make comments about security risks and troublemakers. People stared. Some looked sympathetic. Others appeared frightened. No one interfered. At one point, they passed a group of alien visitors from the Centauri system. The aliens, tall with blue-tinted skin, watched as the officers made Todd demonstrate how the tracking device worked. This is how we handle potential problems on Station 9. Officer Lee explained to the aliens. You can see why it's important to have your papers in perfect order. The aliens looked uncomfortable and quickly moved away. See that? Captain Park said to Ta. Everyone understands how things work here. Everyone except you. Ta noticed the fear in people's eyes as the security team passed. This wasn't just about him. This was a show of power directed at everyone. By midday, Tai was tired, and his leg ached from dragging the weight. The officers finally took him to the station's main hall, where workers were setting up for the ceremony. The big event will be here in a few hours, Captain Park said. You'll attend, of course, with your special accessory. He pointed to the ball and chain. Maybe you can tell Admiral Yoon in person about your mysterious job assignment. Ta looked around the hall. A large platform had been set up at one end. Chairs were arranged in neat rows. A banner hung above the platform. We deal su o mi chiefad mena estrator in large letters. It should be quite a ceremony, Tai agreed. Until then, you're free to move about the public areas, Park said. But remember, we're tracking your every move. Stay out of restricted sections, or you'll face serious consequences. The officers left Ta standing in the hall. He found a quiet corner to rest his leg and watched as staff continued preparing the room. No one paid much attention to him, though occasionally someone would look over when the device beeped. An hour later, the station's announcement system came alive. Attention all station personnel and residents. The ship New Horizon carrying Admiral Yoon has docked. The introduction ceremony for the new chief administrator will begin in 2 hours as scheduled. All department heads and security teams are required to attend. Ta smiled slightly. The New Horizon would be carrying his official uniforms, credentials, and the speech he had prepared. Soon, Captain Park and his officers would learn the truth. He thought about what he had experienced in less than 24 hours on Station 9. The discrimination was worse than the reports had indicated. It wasn't just a few isolated incidents. It was systematic. The ball and chain wasn't just about security. It was about public shame and control. As people began filing into the hall for the ceremony, Ta noticed many different species and humans of various backgrounds. The station was truly diverse, yet the security forces treated that diversity as a threat rather than a strength. Tai took a seat in the middle of the audience, far from the special section reserved for station leaders. The heavy ball rested on the floor beside his chair. Occasionally it would beep, and nearby people would shift uncomfortably away from him. Captain Park and his team entered the hall in freshly pressed uniforms. They looked proud and confident as they took positions near the platform. Park spotted Ta in the audience and gave him a mocking salute. Little did they know that in less than 30 minutes, everything would change. Ta settled back in his chair and waited for Admiral Yoon to arrive. The stage was set. The revelation was about to begin. The main hall of Station 9 filled with people. Workers, officers, technicians, and residents all came to see the new chief administrator. The room buzzed with excited talk. After months with only an interim commander, the station would finally have proper leadership. Ta Kim sat quietly in his seat, the heavy ball resting on the floor beside his foot. The device beeped, and several people glanced his way with curious or pitying looks. No one chose to sit directly next to him. The empty seats around him were a clear sign of how effective the security officer's public shaming tactic was. At the front of the hall, Captain Jin Park stood tall and proud in his crisp uniform. Officers Da Sung and Han Lee stood nearby, looking equally pleased with themselves. Other security officers lined the walls, watching the crowd. They certainly want to make a good impression on the new boss, the voice said. Tay turned to see the kind server from the cafe, taking the seat 2 spaces away from him. Yes, they do, Tay agreed. I'm Min, she said. Sorry about. She nodded toward the tracking device on his ankle. I'm Ta. And don't worry. I think the situation will improve soon. Before Min could respond, the lights in the hall dimmed. A spotlight shone on the entrance doors as they slid open. Admiral Yoon walked in, followed by several officers in formal Earth Command uniforms. Admiral Yoon was a short, serious-looking man with gray hair and a neatly trimmed beard. He walked directly to the platform and stood behind the podium. The officers with him formed a line to one side. "Welcome, residents and staff of Stellar Colony Station 9, Admiral Hume began. This is an important day for all of us. After careful consideration, Earth Command has selected a new chief administrator to lead this station." Captain Park stood a little straighter, clearly hoping to impress the Admiral. "The person we have chosen has an outstanding record," Admiral Hume continued. 5 years at Earth Command Headquarters. Groundbreaking work in space law and interspecies relations. The perfect candidate to lead Station 9 into a new era. The audience clapped politely. Ta noticed Captain Park scanning the VIP section, probably trying to figure out which important-looking person was about to be named. "Without further delay, I am proud to introduce your new Chief Administrator," Admiral Yoon declared. "Please welcome Chief Administrator Ta Kim." Admiral Yoon looked expectantly toward the VIP section. So did everyone else. No one moved. "Chief Administrator Kim," Admiral Yoon repeated, looking confused. Tai took a deep breath and stood up. The heavy ball and chain made a loud thud as it hit the floor. The beeping seemed louder in the suddenly quiet room. Every head turned toward him. Gasps and whispers spread through the crowd. Ta began walking toward the platform, dragging the heavy ball with each step. The sound of the chain scraping across the floor echoed in the silent hall. Beep, drag, step, beep, drag, step. Admiral Yoon's face showed shock, then anger as he saw the device attached to Ta's ankle. Near the platform, Captain Park's face had gone pale. Officers Sung and Lee looked like they might faint. When Tai finally reached the steps to the platform, Admiral Yoon hurried down to meet him. "Chief Administrator Kim, what is the meaning of this? Who put this thing on you?" Yoon demanded, pointing at the tracking device. Ta looked directly at Captain Park. "I believe Captain Park can explain the S7 personal monitoring device. It's for suspicious visitors to Station 9. Isn't that right, Captain?" The entire room was frozen. Captain Park opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Admiral, if I may," Ta said calmly. "I chose to arrive early, without announcement, to observe station operations firsthand. I wanted to see how things really work here before taking command." "And this is what happened?" Admiral Yoon asked, his voice tight with anger. "This is what happened," Ta confirmed. "Captain Park, would you please come remove this device now?" For a moment, Captain Park didn't move. Then, slowly, he walked forward. His face was a mix of fear and shame as he knelt in front of Ta. His hand shook as he took out a small key and unlocked the metal band around Ta's ankle. The heavy ball fell away. Ta moved his foot in a small circle, enjoying the freedom. "Thank you, Captain," Ta said. Admiral Yoon looked furious. "Captain Park, you and your officers will report to my office immediately after this ceremony. This is completely unacceptable. If I may." "Admiral," Ta said, holding up a hand, "I'll handle this matter myself. It is, after all, my command now." Admiral Yoon nodded stiffly. "Of course, Chief Administrator." Ta walked up the steps to the podium. One of Admiral Yoon's officers hurried forward with a uniform jacket that bore the insignia of Station 9's Chief Administrator. Ta put it on over his simple clothes. Looking out at the shocked faces of the audience, Ta began his speech. "People of Station 9, I am Ta Kim, your new Chief Administrator. As you can see, my first experience of this station was unusual." A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd. "I arrived yesterday on a regular transport. I wanted to see this station as most visitors see it. I wanted to understand what works well and what needs improvement." Ta looked directly at Captain Park and his officers. "What I found was troubling. I saw different rules for different people. I saw fear being used as a tool of control. I saw public humiliation used as a weapon." The room was completely silent. "This is not what Station 9 should be. This is not what any human outpost should be. We represent Earth and humanity among the stars. How we treat each other, how we treat visitors, shows who we truly are. Ty held up the heavy tracking device that had been attached to his ankle. This device says more about us than it does about the people forced to wear it. It says we choose fear over trust. It says we prefer control over respect. Captain Park looked at the floor, unable to meet Ty's eyes. Starting today, things will change on Station 9. We will create a place where everyone, human or alien, regardless of appearance, is treated with dignity. Security is important, but it must never come at the cost of our humanity. Ty set the tracking device on the podium. I've experienced firsthand what some visitors to this station endure. It has given me a unique perspective. And now I will use that perspective to build a better Station 9. The audience began to applaud. Slowly at first, then louder. Many stood, especially those who had suffered similar treatment. Tomorrow, I will announce specific changes to station policy. For now, I ask all department heads to meet me in the command center in 1 hour. Captain Park, you and your officers will join us. Ty looked out at the faces watching him. Some looked relieved. Some looked worried. Change was never easy. Thank you for your attention. This ceremony is concluded. As people began to leave, talking excitedly about what had happened, Ta stepped down from the platform. Admiral Yoon approached him. I had no idea things had gotten this bad, Yoon said quietly. I apologize for what you experienced. No need to apologize, Admiral, Tae replied. It was educational. Across the room, Captain Park stood with officers Sung and Lee. They looked lost, their confident posture from earlier completely gone. Min, the cafe server, passed by and gave Tai a wide smile. I knew there was something special about you, she said. Just a person trying to do the right thing, Tai answered. As the hall emptied, Ta felt the weight of his new responsibility. He had seen the problem clearly now. The next challenge would be fixing it. And he knew exactly where to start. 1 hour after the ceremony, Ta Kim sat at the head of the large table in Station 9's command center. The room was impressive, with screens showing different parts of the station and the space around it. The table seated 20 people, with the station's department heads on one side and Admiral Yoon's staff on the other. Captain Jin Park and officers Dae Sung and Han Lee stood near the door, not invited to sit. They looked uncomfortable in their uniforms, which now seemed too tight around their necks. Thank you all for coming, Ta began. As your new chief administrator, I need to understand the challenges we face. Yesterday and today, I experienced one of those challenges firsthand. He pointed to the S7 tracking device, which sat in the middle of the table. This device represents a problem that goes beyond simple security measures. It represents a culture that has developed on this station, a culture of fear, discrimination, and public humiliation. The department heads shifted in their seats. Some looked down, avoiding eye contact. Who approved the use of these devices? Tai asked. No one spoke for a moment. Then the interim commander, a thin man named Chief Bailey, cleared his throat. The S7 was approved 3 years ago as a tracking device for dangerous prisoners during transport, Bailey explained. Its use was expanded over time. Expanded by whom? Tai asked, though he already knew the answer. All eyes turned to Captain Park. Sir, Park began, his voice tense, security threats have increased. We needed stronger measures to chain people up and parade them around the station. Tai interrupted, to single out certain visitors based on their appearance. Park fell silent. Tai looked at each person around the table. I am not here to place blame on any one person. This happened because we allowed it to happen. Because no one spoke up when practices changed. Because feeling safe became more important than doing right. He stood and walked around the table. Today marks a new beginning for Station 9. I am creating a new division effective immediately. The Equality and Ethics Division. Its job will be to ensure all people, humans, and aliens are treated with respect and dignity. Ta stopped in front of Captain Park and his officers. Captain Park, you and Officers Sung and Lee will form the core of this new division. Park's eyes widened in surprise. He had clearly expected to be fired or demoted. Sir, Park asked, confused. You three understand better than anyone how discrimination works on this station, Tai explained. You know the patterns, the excuses, the small steps that lead to big problems. Now you will use that knowledge to fix the system you helped create. Officer Sung looked up. You're not firing us. No, Ta said simply. Firing you would be easy. Transforming you, and this station, will be much harder and much more valuable. Admiral Yoon watched with interest. This was not the usual punishment for such behavior. Your first assignment, Ta continued, will be to collect and destroy every S7 device on this station. Then you will review all security procedures to identify and remove biased practices. Yes, sir, Park said quietly. There's more, Tai added. For the next month, you three will wear modified tracking devices. The officers stiffened. Not like the one you put on me, Tai clarified. These will be smaller, less visible. They will record all your interactions with visitors and residents. We will review these recordings daily as part of your training. Tai turned to address the entire room. I want to be clear, this is not about revenge. This is about learning and growth. Captain Park and his officers are not the only ones who need to change. We all do. He walked back to his chair. Each department will conduct a review of its practices. Look for any policy that might treat people differently based on appearance, origin, or species. Report your findings in 1 week. The department heads nodded. Admiral Yoon, I would appreciate your support in bringing in trainers from Earth Command's Diversity Office. We need expert guidance. Of course, Yoon agreed. I'll make the arrangements immediately. Thank you all. You're dismissed. Captain Park, Officers Sung and Lee, please remain. As the others filed out, Ta gestured for the 3 security officers to sit at the table. They did so cautiously, as if expecting a trap. When the room was empty except for the 4 of them, Ta spoke more gently. I want you to understand something. I could have you transferred to the coldest, most remote outpost in Earth space. Many would say you deserve it. The officers remained silent, eyes down. But that would solve nothing. You would be gone, but the problem would remain. And the next station you worked at would face the same issues. Tad leaned forward. I'm giving you a chance to be part of the solution. A chance to help build something better than what we have now. But it will only work if you truly want to change. Captain Park finally met Ta's eyes. Why? He asked. After what we did to you. Because this isn't about me or you, Ta answered. It's about what kind of future we want. Do we want a future where people fear each other because they look different, or one where we recognize our common humanity and extend that respect to non-humans as well? Officer Lee spoke up. It won't be easy. The security teams have been operating this way for years. I know, Tai agreed. Change never is easy, but it's necessary. And if we fail, Officer Sung asked, then you'll be removed from your positions. Ta said simply, but I don't think you'll fail. I think you'll surprise yourselves with what you can accomplish. Ta stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Report to my office tomorrow morning at 800. We'll begin your new training then. As the officers left, Tai remained in the command center, looking out the large viewport at the stars beyond. His ankle still felt strange without the heavy weight that had been attached to it for the past day. 6 months later, Tai stood at the back of a crowded hall, the same hall where he had been revealed as the chief administrator. Today, it was filled for a different reason. On the stage, Captain Park, now Lieutenant Park, since his promotion last month, was speaking to representatives from 20 different alien species and human colonies. Station 9 has made mistakes in the past, Park was saying. I have made mistakes, but we have learned from them. Today, our security procedures focus on actual threats, not appearances. Our training emphasizes respect for all beings, and our tracking devices are used only when truly necessary, with strict oversight. Beside Park stood Officers Sung and Lee, also recently promoted. Behind them was a large screen showing Station 9's new visitor satisfaction ratings, the highest of any Earth outpost. Tai smiled with genuine pride. The change had not been easy. There had been resistance. Some officers had requested transfers rather than adapt. But most had embraced the new approach, and the results spoke for themselves. As Park concluded his speech, the audience applauded. Many approached him afterward, shaking his hand or offering their species equivalent gestures of respect. Min, the cafe server who was now head of the station's visitor welcome committee, joined Tai at the back of the room. "Did you ever imagine this 6 months ago?" she asked, nodding toward Park and his team. "I hoped," Tai replied. "But hope isn't enough. It takes work. Daily, difficult work." "Well, the work has paid off," Min said. "Station 9 is different now. People aren't afraid anymore." Todd watched as Lieutenant Park showed a group of alien visitors the new security screening procedure, efficient, respectful, and based on actual data rather than bias. "The true test of leadership," Ta said quietly, "isn't punishing mistakes. It's transforming them into opportunities for growth." "Quite the philosopher, Chief Administrator," Min teased. Ta laughed. "Just a person trying to do the right thing, one day at a time." As they walked out of the hall, Tai thought about the heavy ball and chain that had once been attached to his ankle. It now sat in a display case in the station's main entrance, with a plaque that read, "A reminder of where we've been and why we must never go back." Some lessons were hard, but those were often the ones that changed the most lives.